Okay. Hello, everyone. I hope you can hear me okay. Um, I am hoping today to talk about a few different things. Um, I've been looking at some philosophy tubers. Most of them are quite young, and it's interesting that they ask questions. They're not that young. I think they're in their 20s. And they seem to be addressing mainstream topics more than existential topics, which there's nothing wrong with that. A lot of these mainstream topics are existential, but I guess I'm not really here to criticize them. That's um, kind of digressing there. The thing I wanted to talk about was that, oh, there's a staple coming out of this. Anyways, so I just noticed that there were a few things that kind of kept coming up, uh, that they'd call paradoxes. They'd reference them as you know something that's like almost an unsolvable problem, and they were so fascinated, and that very basic, well, for in my case, basic physics could, or chemistry or something, could kind of solve this issue. And so it went from like, as a philosophical question, maybe it's a very like, wow, but as an actual question, it's very simple. And so then it got me thinking that what if there were other questions that people could take, philosophical questions that people could take, that maybe that I've been thinking about, you've been thinking about, and try and spin a little more of a not logical lens. I don't think that's the right word, because then you get into the weeds, but just a like a data driven kind of trying scientific mathematical lens, and kind of, because what I'm seeing more and more is philosophy can be quite selfish, and it's focused very much. It can be very focused on humans, and what why are we here? Why are we conscious? Why do we suffer? What is right and wrong for us? And it's a very narrow lens of everything, of life. And oftentimes, if you apply a physics or a chemistry or a biology lens, or a mathematical lens, then that seems to clear up some of these problems. So why wouldn't you do that? Why would you? So anyways, so quickly, I'm just going to run through some examples, and I'm hoping this won't take too long. And also, I apologize. This is going to be unedited. I don't really have editing stuff going on right now. It's not really my priority. So if you want to watch this through and you want to skip around, or if you want to take the time to just sit and enjoy, or if you want to exit and never watch this, that's fine. So yeah, so hopefully I can hold your attention a little bit. Okay, so let's jump into it. First example, I keep hearing the example of, and And this is a mathematical problem as well, but you have something that is a certain distance apart. Maybe it's an object, maybe it's two hands this far apart, maybe whatever, and they have to come together, or okay. So let's start with this one. So you have to bring your hands together, and between here and your hands being together, and you're trying to clap. But anyways, between these 2 points, you have to pass halfway point. You have to pass infinite halfway points, right? But it's interesting. You can also, and I haven't heard this, but okay, first of all, they never talk about velocity. So your hands have a velocity. So sure, you're passing halfway point, but your hands are traveling a distance at a velocity. So that distance will take a certain amount of time. And so they say, oh, okay, well, but how do you pass those final infinitely small halfway points? Now, I don't know anything about that, but let's say you don't have to pass those halfway points. Let's say your hands never touch, but they get, which I think it's been proven that the atoms in your hands don't touch. There's energy transferred between them. And so it feels, and so your nervous system picks up on that energy transfer, and you can feel the other hand, but you don't, the atoms in your hands never touch. So the question of, how do you get to that point where they touch if you're infinitely passing halfway points? And the thing is, you don't touch, they don't touch. So that's the answer. You get to a certain halfway point where they feel as though they're touching, and that's it. That's the answer. And also, how do you make the sound of clapping? Well, you have a certain velocity, and that velocity comes to an end, and it creates some sort of reverberation in the atoms in the air. So you're collapsing air between your hands, and it creates a reverberation out of that pocket, and so you have a clap. But your hands don't have to touch. It'd be like saying that you need 2 supersonic jets to make a supersonic boom, but you don't. So it's like snapping your fingers. Snapping your fingers, that's a whole thing. But you snap your fingers, and you can snap when the snapping sound comes often when your fingers separate. So just so many problems. So okay, there's science. Then we've got a problem with there's a turtle racing Achilles. This is just what I heard. And let's say the turtle is halfway down the race, and Achilles, so you put the turtle starts halfway closer to the finish line than Achilles does. Achilles is going to run, by the time the Achilles closes, let's say, a quarter of the distance of the race, so halfway towards the turtle will have moved a little bit forwards, and etc. And so how will Achilles ever catch up to the turtle if the turtle always moves a little bit forward? Whenever Achilles takes a step, the turtle takes a step, and so they're each moving a little bit, but it doesn't address velocity. And the point that this is the same infinitely halving something. The point at which you are halving is not between Achilles and the turtle, which I think is kind of the mathematical thing happening in this philosophical debate, is you're somehow the line that is being cut in half and in half and in half is the line between Achilles and the turtle. But that's not the line that's being cut in half in the first place. It's the line between start and finish. And if that line becomes halved and halved and halved faster for Achilles than it does for the turtle, then Achilles wins the race. And his velocity is higher than the turtle's. And so likely he will cross that finish line first. So it's very simple. I don't know. I don't understand the paradox because it's very simple, like error in, not logic, in boundary setting. Like you have in anything, physics or math or whatever, you have certain boundaries you set up, certain assumptions you make. And it's just a very simple, you've set up incorrect boundaries and incorrect assumptions. And that's it. And that's fair. It's very easy to do that. But that's the problem. The problem is not a real paradox. So anyways, so that's another one. There's one where, okay, so there's one about whether we see if we all see color the same way. Now that's complicated, and I have thought about it, but I think it's too long for this video, so I'll talk about it another time. But I think it's a fun question. But a lot of these are questions that I thought of when I was a teenager, and I've kind of come past them. So it's very interesting that these are still questions that philosophers are debating. Anyways, so there's also, look up It's Turtles All the Way Down. Look that up. It's a very simple idea, and it is an interesting question. But again, it feels like something that teenagers discuss, or young 20s who are just figuring out that sex isn't the only thing going on. And so the last one I want to quickly talk about is, oh no, I've forgotten. Okay, so what is memory? No, I'm just kidding. Okay, so I've remembered. So I tried to take this idea of applying more of a scientific-minded outlook on philosophical questions, and you kind of I came to the, like, what is the meaning of life? And in that question, you have to address real quick, you want to talk about what is meaning and what is life. And you want to kind of set those boundaries and assumptions before moving into answering that question. So, and that's a good thing. So the boundary that we're setting, life is going to be, like, what is a life? A life is a set period of time that something that is alive will, between their birth and their death, and that's a life. And there's an assumed kind of period that a human will live. And so a life is kind of 100 years or 85 years or something like that, on average. And so it's like, okay, so a life is a period of time that a thing is alive and functioning and able to, express themselves and exert their will on the world and whatever. And so we have life. That's a life. And no deeper. We're not going to go any deeper than that. No spirituality, no metaphysics. A life is a set period of time that you are alive for, that anything is alive for. So then this actually opens it up to anything that is living, right? And it takes it away from the idea of being human centric. Anything that is living. So, okay. And then what is meaning? So what is the meaning of life? So what is meaning? I don't know. Meaning could be the meaning that I think of, I think is like purpose. What is the purpose of this 100-year cycle? What is the purpose of this generational cycle of continued human existence? So, I mean, and this has been answered, but anyways, so it's just, and when we frame it in this way, what is the continued cycle of, or what is the purpose of a squirrel being born and living for, I don't know how long squirrels live, 10 years, and then passing away. Well, the purpose, okay, so this feels touchy. The purpose is not, okay, I want to say like have it the next generation. And I'm not saying that the point of being alive is to have kids. Not at all. But, you know, there will be a new generation that will come after you, and so your purpose during your 100 years is to somehow contribute so that the next generation will have a foundation that they can then contribute to. And that can be having children. That could be working a mundane job to pay your bills so that someone somewhere can go to school, right? You pay taxes. You have a job, you pay taxes. Those taxes to go towards a school or a healthcare system. And that aids the younger people coming up underneath you, and then that contributes to them being able to contribute. And you're like, oh, that's very mundane and like cyclical, right? It's very cyclical, and it may be a little boring, but no. Art is a contribution to, okay, so you go out in the morning and you buy breakfast. You expect, let's say you expect a contribution to you. Those people making you breakfast, the people who own the property that the restaurant's in, these people have in some way contributed to your continued survival. And so then going about your day and doing, just being lazy and not doing anything to contribute in return would, if you walked around everywhere and you expected to get things for free, just as an example, then you were being contributed to without contributing in return. Right? So now maybe you see that you should that yeah, having this purpose of contributing in some way is important, because people are contributing to your continued survival. And okay, I'll give you an example. There's a YouTuber named Foresty Forest, and he lives in his van. He lives in the forest a lot of the time. So he a lot of his he doesn't demand a lot of contribution from other people, or from society, but he has a van. He eats food. He buys gasoline, and these are all contributions to him. And you might say, okay, his contribution in return is he pays money, and that's good enough. He's keeping the economic cycle. He's one more person in the economic cycle. That money, it's good. It's still in circulation. It's all good, and that's true. But something else he does is he goes to trails. He'll video himself doing like skiing and trails. He'll check out avalanche control. And so he's documenting. He's getting information. He's clearing trails. He's creating new trails. He's cleaning up campsites. He is he's taking care of his dog. He is showing where he does historical sort of documentaries, and brings certain things into the spotlight that people don't know about. He's advertising for Canada, and more specifically for British Columbia. So there's all these things that, he's, you could be like, he's a YouTuber, but he is contributing in a lot of small ways, and he doesn't really demand a lot from society in return. And so it's a very valid contribution, extremely. Like, even if, let's say, he didn't do any of those things and he just went and lived in his van, there's nothing wrong with that either. I'm not saying that. But he does do these things. He contributes in these ways to a better future, and then the generation that comes later will see his work. They'll see his videos. They'll see his trails. They'll see his clean campsites. Clean up your campsites. They'll see his clean campsites, and they'll be better off for it. And they'll never see him. They'll never meet him. They'll never know him, but they'll be better off for him. And his life is well spent. And so you gotta. So that's what I mean when I say your purpose, the purpose of life, the purpose of your life is to live it in some way, contributing so that the next people can live their life, and they will do their best to contribute in some way so that the next people can live their life. And that is beautiful. It's community, and it's love and affection for other people and from other people. Even if you live alone all your life, maybe like some sort of religious, like a monk of some sort, or at a monastery of some sort. And let's say you live alone in silence, but you write a book about God, and someone in the future reads that book about God, and they they feel fulfilled, and they, you know, they find purpose in whatever was written there. You know, Thomas Merton's Seven Story Mountain um, is a good book for that. So there is like a good. I don't know. I'm trying to say that it doesn't have to be, you know, world changing. A person who. Sorry, there's a dog howling away up there. A person who, let's say, their only contribution is, I don't know. Okay, I don't know. I can't think of anything. But let's say what do I want to say? No, I can't think of anything. But I'm trying to say that it doesn't have to be anything big. In fact, it can be quite small. Small, you know. And that's not really the point. Let's say you spend your life collecting wild berries for your bunny rabbits. That's fine. Right? That's fine. And it's like, well, Andrew, but let's say that you spend your life collecting berries for your bunny rabbits, and then one day some children come over and they see your bunny rabbits and they're like, ah, bunnies. There, you've contributed. Because you have brought joy to a child, and they're like, ah, cute bunny rabbits. That's it. That's simple as that. Was that on purpose? Probably not. But that's not the point. I'm not saying you have to actively try to contribute in some big way. But that's the meaning. That's the meaning of life. Is doing something so that the next generation can continue to exist. And if you have the capacity, then getting involved in your community is the best way that you can do that. And so, I mean, shout out to all the women who basically run a community behind the scenes with like non-for-profits and volunteer and charity work, you know. Yeah. So that feels like a little more of a lot, like not logical, but like a little more scientific minded, kind of simplified version of the question, what is the meaning of life? Instead of coming at it from like such an ambiguous philosophical direction. And I talked through this with myself the other day, and it actually, like, I feel better. I go into work and I feel like, oh, you know, I'm working. I'm contributing, and I've always been hesitant to get involved in my community. I don't know, but now I feel a little bit more of that Like, if I did, then I'm contributing. And, you know, and then the next generation will be slightly better off, hopefully. Or, there'll at least be a continuation of something that can in some way benefit new people coming up, younger people coming up, and yeah, and its motivation to do things in and of itself, not because God will take me to heaven for it, but because it's good. It's maybe it'll help the community out a little bit. Yeah, that's it. So it's nice. It's nice to break these things down, these philosophical questions down, with a little bit more of a scientific bent on them, and I would encourage you to try it out. And yeah, have yourself a wonderful day. Stop it. It did.